And they said, there's something I want to share with you, and that's 5 things that I think have been the most impactful for me. They read out this list. Your thoughts are not facts. Progress is not linear. Your environment shapes your behaviour. Identity drives outcomes. And for goodness sake, whatever you do not. When we look at behavioural science, development is a cycle, not a ladder. We have wins, we have plateaus, we have setbacks, we have growth spurts. And the danger really comes when we start to believe that growth always means that we're getting closer to what we want and that we're becoming better every day. That's just simply not how biology, psychology, or just real life in general works. You can't do it on your own. When it gets hard, you need people around you that are going to support you. You also, when it gets really, really good and you start to hit those achievements, who are you going to celebrate with? Who are you going to celebrate with? You're going to have them people in your life, one way or another. There's this really weird experience that comes with being a coach, and it's the day that you finish working with a client, because in so many ways that's a massive victory, that the relationship that you've had with this client has got to the point where they no longer feel the way they used to, that they have learned and practiced and honed in on the things that were necessary for them to become the person they want to become, or whatever the issue was, whatever the challenge was, whatever the goal was that they were trying to achieve in their life has been achieved, or at least they're very much on the way to it. But at the same time, you've had all this time with this person, you've built this relationship with this person, and you're going to miss them. And I often say, I've got the worst business model in the entire world, that my job and my goal is to make it so that you don't feel that you need me anymore. Coaching is about becoming someone's co-pilot. It's a real privilege. It's about being able to sit with people in the moments that are really, really difficult for them, and to encourage them and support them to look inside of themselves and find that inner wisdom that's in all of us. It's never about the coach being right or the coach having all of this wisdom that they're going to pass along. It's not a parent-child moment or anything like that. It's more about, as a coach, and maybe this is just my philosophy, but I've met many others that feel the same way, is that the client always has the answers. It's just stuck behind some sort of challenging emotion or experience. And my job as a coach is to gently nurture them, to support them, to stand with them while they move towards those difficult things. And also to share in the victories that they have as well. I've got a client whom their first session was about whether or not they wanted to have children, and now they're about to have a baby, a baby boy, I think. So, yeah, moments like that are incredible. But why am I talking about all this? What the hell's this got to do with anything, Johnny? You're often one. Have you hit record on the wrong thing, or what's happening? Well, it's because every time I come to the end with a client, I think it's really important to mark those endings. And we have like a review. We talk about what it is that they got from the sessions. And I ask them, maybe sit before the session and think about what you got from this experience. And I'd love to hear about it. I'd love you to share it with me on that last session. It doesn't take up the whole session. It's just a small part at the end. And then we say goodbye. And very often, now and again, there's these moments that come up and they're like, Johnny, I think I need to book some sessions. And I'm like, cool, let's do that. And then we're back in each other's lives again. But this one particular client last week, it was our final session. There's this moment in coaching where I think it's really important that we recognize that the client probably doesn't need the coach anymore, and that it might be a good idea for them to try life without you for a little while. Because if you're not careful, what can happen is sometimes a client can become dependent on their coach, and then they don't feel like they can ever make decisions without speaking to their coach first. And I mean, in some regards, I suppose financially it's quite good for the coach, but I don't think it's particularly good for the client. So I make it a point to mention that, to sort of bring it up and say, look, I'm feeling like you're making a lot of really good decisions on your own, and I notice that your package is coming to an end. Maybe we should try it without me for a little while and see how you get along. Because I don't think that people need coaching forever. I think they might come back later down the line, and that's cool. They gave it some thought. They initially hated the idea, but then they came back to me and they said, you know what, Johnny, I think that's a really good idea. I spoke it through my partner and I think, yeah, that's what I'll do. I was like, cool. And they said, there's something I want to share with you. And that's 5 things that I think have been the most impactful for me when it comes to the stuff that I've learned through this process of coaching and self-development. And they read out this list of things and I was just like, wow, that is so incredible that person's taken that. So I said to them, I've written these down. Do you mind if I talk about them in my podcast? And it's like, absolutely not. Just don't mention my name. I was like, of course I won't. So I'm not going to mention your name. I left that awkward pause there just to scare you. But I reserve the right to antagonize my clients, always. So number one, what was number one? The first thing was, and I loved it when they said this, you are not your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. That there is a massive lesson to learn. It really, really is. It's an absolutely massive lesson to learn. Because here's the thing, right? We think that everything we think is true and is us and is like a demand and it must be a decision being made, but it's not. It's not always. It's not always. And this is backed by research. I always like to do my preparation for the podcast, and I thought it'd be interesting for me to look in and see if there was any research on it. And there were some studies in cognitive therapy, and it showed that our thoughts are often automatic, habitual, and biased as well. And what happens is we often confuse our thoughts for truth. We think that we've made a decision, we think that we've thought something through, we think that something is going on and that this is the truth and that we feel in some way, shape or form, it's a demand. It's something that now has to happen. It's almost like a commitment to ourselves. Because we thought it, it must be true, therefore I must do something about it. For example, if you think to yourself, I am not good enough, that thought doesn't actually mean anything until you give it some power. Then guess what? You start to believe that you are not good enough. And here's the thing about bias as well, there's something called confirmation bias, which is where as we walk through life with a certain belief or a certain thought going on in our mind, all of a sudden everything we see seems to confirm that thought to us. We seem to see things that just suggest that that thought that we're having is right. You might walk through life and you might very rarely notice a red car. And then I say to you, today, look out for red cars. All of a sudden, you see red cars everywhere. It's not because there are more red cars on the road suddenly. It's because you are starting to notice them because the thought has come into your head. That's a very brief example of how confirmation bias would work. And the thing about cognitive behavioral therapy is that what it does is it teaches you to observe your thoughts. Look at it more like a TV show that you're watching. It's just something that you're observing. You're just watching it. It doesn't mean anything. It's like you don't go and watch a TV show and immediately start acting out in the street. Well, I hope you don't. You probably shouldn't. Let's just say that. If you get to observe your thoughts, what that does is it puts a little bit of time in between the thought becoming an action or a behavior or becoming who you think you are. And what that does is it offers you what I think is the ultimate thing that you can have in your life: choice. It offers you the opportunity to observe, to recognize that that is a helpful thought, an unhelpful thought, and either choose to take an action or not, because taking an action is also a choice. Choosing to do nothing. So start watching your thinking a bit like a movie. Think of it more as content rather than identity. The second thing that my client said was, progress is not linear. You can see how this catches you out, right? You think that progress goes in steps, and the real truth about life, the ultimate truth about life, is that it's messy, it's unpredictable, and sometimes when things happen that you didn't want to happen or you didn't expect to happen or just felt bad, they don't always mean that they are bad. I will forever have to wrestle with the fact that there are major life events that have happened to me in my life that I will probably always find difficult to think about. But the hardest part about those thoughts is that, in truth, I actually think they needed to happen in order for me to ultimately get what I wanted out of life. It was the only way that those things could play out. Now, I probably wouldn't have chose them, but ultimately they got me to where I wanted to be. You see, progress isn't linear. It doesn't look like what you planned, because human progress rarely goes in this beautifully straight line where everything is logical, makes sense, and goes exactly the way that you want it to go. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. And it's when we look at behavioral science by people like BJ Fogg and James Clear that we really start to understand how habit formations start to work. And what it shows is development is a cycle, not a ladder. And in everything that we ever aspire to achieve in life, we have wins, we have plateaus, we have setbacks, we have growth spurts. And the danger really comes when we start to believe that that growth always means that we're getting closer to what we want and that we're becoming better every day. That's just simply not how biology, psychology, or just real life in general works. Not in my experience, and I'm sure you can think of it that way too. Think of it like this. Imagine learning a new language. You might have good days with this language where everything you say sounds beautiful. You're even starting to get the accent. You're even starting to get the tone. You're even starting to get everything seems like it's going really well. Then there's other days based off of not having any sleep, just having a generally crap day where you forget words or you say words wrong or somebody laughs because you've said it incorrectly. This is the way it is. This is the way it is. It doesn't mean that you've forgotten it and that you're useless as that language, that when only yesterday you felt like an expert. It just means that you're having a bad day. And that's why it's so important to ask yourself not am I getting better every day? But rather, am I committed to the process? Because in my experience, that's where real growth happens. The third thing that my client said was the importance of environments. Do you know that I think environment's important? That's why it was the last one when it came to the MADE model. The morals, ambitions, drivers, and environments. The last one is environments, because I believe that if you don't set your environment up to support the person you want to become, then it's still set up for the person that you was before that, which means that your whole entire life is always going to be cueing you to behave like the person that you used to be. Now, if you are going to rely on willpower in order to be the best version of yourself or to move towards what it is that you want, then what you are doing is committing to a temporary source of motivation, which I don't know why you'd do that. Because the truth about willpower, and I did a podcast on this a couple of weeks back, is that it is limited. It's like a muscle. At some point, you're going to exhaust that muscle and it's no longer going to be able to perform in a way in which it used to. In fact, sometimes it just straight up stops working, and that's not ideal either. And these days, it's not just the physical environment, the social environment, it's also the digital environment too. For me, especially, I found that the digital environment has been the one that's most problematic. I work a lot from home. I see a lot of people on video calls. And if I'm honest, in between that, I get distracted really easily by my phone if I don't set my environment up the right way. If I have to have my phone with me for whatever reason, perhaps there's a call I'm waiting for, or it's important for me to have my phone nearby, then I find that day a little bit more challenging because notifications go off and beeps go off and it's just there on the desk and there's this temptation. It's almost like I don't have any control over my hand. It just reaches for the phone. And before you know it, I'm looking at it and I'm into it. Because the truth of it is, our environment cues us to behave a certain way. And this is important because that can mean it can either cue us to behave the way that we want to behave, to become the person we want to become, or it can cue us to become the person we don't want to become. It can either support our environment or it can corrupt our environment. Think of it like this. People eat more food when they have bigger plates. People like to fill their plates. You go to a carvery, if they give you an enormous plate, you're going to fill it. And then you're probably going to force yourself to eat that too. If you have a smaller plate, you're going to fill that too. Either way, it's your environment that's cueing you towards the behavior. You put more food on the plate because the plate's bigger. You could put exactly the same amount of food, but you don't. People at cash out desks, they often spend more money if the cash desk is optimized for upselling. How many times have you got to a cash desk, you've gone to go and pay for something and you've just seen something last minute and you've decided to go for it because there's the pressure on, you're about to go to the cash desk, you haven't got a long time to debate it, so you go, oh, sod it, and you grab it and you do it anyway. Before you know it, you've got the chewing gum. Before you know it, you've got the packet of sweets or whatever it is that's at the cash desk. And it's the same, like I said before, with mobile phones. If you've got your mobile phones buzzing near you with notifications, then you're more likely to pick them up and look at them. If you didn't have them on, then you probably wouldn't. You'd have no reason to. It wouldn't draw your attention. And that's what it really comes down to. Your triggers shape your behaviors. Because if your environment is set up to pull you away from your goals, that's what will happen. Because most of the time, they're frictionless actions. They're unhealthy but tasty foods. They're probably going to have high drama people. People that have got big, oh my God, you never guess what happened to me today. What? I want to know what happened to you today. Tell me what happened. And then, of course, as I spoke about, you've got the endless digital distractions. There are maybe 1,000 ways that you can use your phone. 1,000 ways that you can gain information, entertainment, whatever it is that you're looking for, you will find it on your phone. And all that's ever going to do, most likely, is pull you away from the things that are important towards the things that actually don't mean anything to us but keep us entertained and distracted. And the truth is, no amount of motivation can fix that. So the key has to be, the takeaway has to be to set your environment up to support the person that you want to become, to support the things that you want to get done, to support the things that are important to you. And not only will it cue you, just like the opposite would do, it will cue you to behave in the way that you want to. You could also save an incredible amount of energy just not fighting your surroundings. Don't underestimate that, because you'll be surprised how much energy it takes continuously wrestling with the things that you do all the time. So remove the triggers. And that starts with identifying the triggers. Maybe you take a day just observing yourself without judgment, just looking at the things that draw your attention. And then add some supportive cues. How can you get the things done that you want to get done? How can you make them as appealing and easy and frictionless as possible? Because what we're doing ultimately will be to design environments and spaces for your desired habits and outcomes. The fourth thing that my client said is that your identity drives your outcome. See, at the beginning when we're working together, they don't see the person they want to become, not straight away. Very often they see the desired outcome. They look and they go to themselves, this is what I want. But what they don't realize is that there's a certain type of person that achieves those things. There's a certain type of person that wakes up every day and makes decisions. There's a certain type of person that wakes up every day and takes actions in the right direction. And then there's a person that doesn't do those things. It's not that someone's good or bad or better or worse. It's just that this is what we see more commonly. And ultimately what it becomes is the awareness of who you think that you are. And it's the research by psychologist Dan McAdams, who spent pretty much his career studying how identity shapes behavior. And here's one of the differences, I think, that is brought out within his research. If you think goals are external, you might say to yourself, I want to lose weight. If your identity is internal, you start to believe that you are a healthy person. What I'm saying is goals can motivate, but identity grounds behavior. If you can see yourself as someone that values growth, then your actions will follow that identity. It's something that I really had to get my head behind when it came to becoming an author. I couldn't say to myself that every day I was trying to become an author. I had to say to myself that every day I'm somebody that writes. That's what I had to, even if some days I was just doing 10 minutes, 15 minutes, I had to be somebody that made time for writing. And what was always really interesting is, especially early on, there'd be this resistance to it. But once I started writing, I would just lose hours of my life, losing myself to the writing. I actually ended up cutting 30,000 words from my book, you'll be happy to hear, which was basically just get caught up in the flow. Because I do love writing. I really do love writing. And there's something that's really good for my soul when I do it. But even though I had that experience multiple times, I still had that resistance. So ultimately, what I had to ask myself is, what type of person does this new behavior belong to? Because once I identified that, I just started acting like that person until one day I became that person. And the last thing that my client pointed out to me, this was probably the one that touched me the most, because this person was a bit of a lone wolf in life. And that was, you won't get anywhere without support. That you might take pride in being the lone wolf and thinking to yourself that you did it all on your own. But the truth of it is, the lone wolf doesn't survive. That's why the wolves tend to hang out in packs. It just means that you make the decisions to go and see people. I made an episode not long ago, might have even been the last episode, I can't remember. I made an episode where I talked about how much I wanted to quit. There has been so many times in this self-development journey, especially in the beginning, where my podcast was getting barely any listens, that my reels on Instagram weren't getting any views, that people weren't liking or caring. I felt like I was just talking to myself, and my father's voice crept back into my head. You're making a fool of yourself. You're delusional. You're worthless. You can't do this. You're a failure. What are you doing? What's the point? All of this was going on in my head, and I really, really, really wanted to quit. It just felt easier. If I stop doing this, if I uncommit to this thing that I've said to myself I was going to do, then I don't have to feel this way anymore. And if it wasn't for the fact that I surrounded myself with people that would never let me do that, it didn't matter who I turned to in my life. That absolutely not. Absolutely not. You're not quitting. You're not going to do that at all. People like my wife, people like my brother, people like my best friends in life that are always there for me, that always share, always got my back, always happy for me. Those people there, the ones that I show up in the same way for. You can't do it on your own. When it gets hard, you need people around you that are going to support you. You also, when it gets really, really good and you start to hit those achievements, who are you going to celebrate with? Who are you going to celebrate with? You're going to have them people in your life one way or another. And there's research, positive psychology, that says that people that grow in communities actually grow quicker and faster. They make decisions quicker. They feel supported. They don't feel like it's so scary and they have to go through things on their own. They've got that support. They've got that community. So take it from me as somebody that did this. Do not isolate yourself. Whether it's a coach, a mentor, a therapist, or just a bloody good friend or partner, it doesn't matter. It's so vital that you realize that support matters. You don't have to do this on your own. You don't have to do this on your own. There's friends, there's people that care about you that will bear this weight with you. And when it gets difficult, when you want to quit, when it feels like so alluring and so easy and so logical to just quit and to stop, there'll be that friend there that says, don't do that. Let's go for a walk instead. And you'll be amazed at spending time with somebody who's in a different mindset, someone that cares about you as much as you, well, more than you do yourself in that moment, how much that can help. So let me recap what my client told me that they'd got from the time we would work together. They said that there were 5 things that they learned that really stuck with them and really cemented their journey. The 5 things that they felt were the most important things when it came to their own self-development. Your thoughts are not facts. Progress is not linear. Your environment shapes your behavior. Identity drives outcomes. And for goodness sake, whatever you do, do not do this thing alone. Thank you so much for listening to this episode today. As always, the Self-Made Life Audit is in the description below. Yeah, I said it last week. Man, some people are making some big decisions and I'm in trouble. I'm in trouble. It doesn't have answers because I don't believe that that's the right way to look at life. I don't think that there's anyone out there or any process out there that gives you the right answers. What I think is important though is somehow, some way, you have to start asking yourself the right questions. And that is most certainly what the Life Audit does. They're difficult questions. They're confronting questions. They are challenging questions. But if you find the answer to them, then you'll have no choice but to change because you can't unknow what you know. Anyway, thank you so much for listening and I'll see you next week for another episode of the Johnny Lawrence Podcast.